Welcome to another Founder Wisdom podcast. Today we have two co-founders of Fortified Risk Group with us. We have Jake Williams and Robin Miller. Fortified Risk Group is an interesting company. It's a security service provider that offers customized solutions. So we're gonna get right into it. Jake, Robin, maybe you could start both of you with a quick intro.
Yeah, Jake Williams, one of the co-founders, Fortified Risk Group. I had a career in the SEAL teams, and then got out of the Navy. And shortly after that, Robin and I decided to start Fortified Risk Group, really just with the passion and the desire of keeping people safe. And so we're about 5 years old now, and we've just spent a lot of time bringing unique solutions to our wide variety of clients to make sure that they're safe.
And like Jake, I spent 20 years in the United States Navy, all of it in the SEAL teams. And it just gave me the only reason it's really relevant to this topic is the security industry. Our background just provides us this really unique perspective. Like, I look at life a little bit different. Some people, maybe my wife would say I'm a little bit tainted, or maybe a little bit, not paranoid, but like I just see things different. I look at life a little bit different. And having spent pretty much the majority of my adult life in some form of combat zone or non-permissive environment, it just gave me, a lot of exposure to a lot of things. And then it really just gave me a really interesting background that allows me to keep people safe, to see threats, and then help people kind of make things safer, if that makes sense.
Makes a lot of sense. Let's start with both of your stories, right? Jake, can you tell us of your time as a Navy SEALs? What mission, specifically, what challenges you face, and what you learned from your time there?
Yeah, it's a good question. I did just over 12 years in the Navy, and I had the fortunate opportunity of I served with some amazing people. I served with some really amazing teammates, and the challenges were all across the board. Everything from what you encounter in training that prepares you for like the real world scenarios, real world operations, and then you encounter various challenges overseas actually carrying out these operations. For me, I think some of the biggest challenges were just you're operating in an environment that's not your backyard, that's not your home, different culture, different language, different climate, different environment, and we're supposed to go there and be dominant in those areas. So it's just using everything we could, all of our training, coordinating assets, coordinating with as many other friendlies that you could to be successful in whatever operation we were tasked with. And so it's just a lot of problem solving, a lot of understanding the environment, adapting to the environment, overcoming the environment, and then continuing to push through.
What about you, Robin? You mentioned that you see the world differently. What events did you face in your time there, and how did that made you a different person?
Yeah, sure. So in my 20 years, I spent like a majority of it, well, not a majority of it, but a good chunk of it overseas. And like I said, these non-permissive in kind of combat zones, so to speak, or definitively combat zones. And it's just really learning how to work as a team, hence SEAL team, but learning to remove kind of the self and work as a high functioning team in really challenging environments. Learning how to find, fix, and solve problems in really unfriendly terrain. And it gave me, I don't know, I feel really confident finding solutions to challenging problems, having spent 20 years doing that stuff.
Right. Guess you both have muscle memory of how to deal with physical threats, physical events, but seems that your company is also more about preventing these events from happening. So how much of it is actually brains and how much of it is actually muscle?
Go ahead, Robin. I think that's an excellent question, and we'll probably both chime in on that.
I mean, it's not, in terms of what we do, it really, and our previous life, it isn't a ton of muscle. It's be physically fit, right? The expectation is a fundamental level of fitness so you can do things from sea level to high altitude. But what we've really learned is it's just doing your homework. Do upstream think. Look at every possibility and then be prepared to react to those possibilities. So really, yeah, there's a common misconception that most special operations guys are just these big, huge, muscle bound guys. And Jake and I are both very mediocre sized human beings. Like we're both short dudes. But you know, you find the grit in the process. It is very gritty, learning how to do the job, but really the job is done through contemporary tactics, techniques, procedures, technology, doing everything you can to be up ahead of that problem. So you don't actually, in a perfect world, you de-escalate and you move away from that problem. You don't even cross that bridge that's out, so to speak. You know, if you're doing your homework, you know that the bridge that you're coming up is successful or it's intact. So you don't have to find another way around it. And really that's how we try to solve problems, is just do everything you can, utilizing all the techniques, all the technology that exists today to really keep people safe. And that's what we're doing. So we don't want to react. We train though. We train physically and we're capable of reacting to a response with equal or more force. But gosh, we sure hope we don't ever need to do that. And we do that by just being prepared, knowing the battlefield electronically, physically, and everything in between.
One of the first things I remember hearing as a student was prior proper planning prevents piss poor performance. And it was just that idea of don't let the predictable surprise you. There were all these like little catchphrases that you'd hear as a new guy or as a student. And as a student or a new guy on a team, you hear that kind of thing. And you know you're hearing it from guys that are speaking it with a level of wisdom and experience because they had been ahead of the path I'd walked on, and they know like it works. And so like what Robin was saying, like don't let the predictable surprise you, or like upstream thinking. If you have that prior proper planning in place, the likelihood of avoiding the conflict altogether then is good. And so we would like to say, like, if you are in a gunfight you didn't plan, then you're in an ambush right now. And so I think even when we look back on our careers, I would say most of the probably more successful operations that we were on were probably relatively uneventful from a significant activity standpoint. It was like, well, we had good intelligence, we planned well, we executed well, and I wouldn't say it was uneventful, but relatively uneventful. Was usually the better planned operations.
Give us some specific case studies. You work with corporations, executives, schools, right? There's school shootings nowadays a lot. So give us some examples of case studies and the active threats that you manage before shit hits the fan.
Yeah, we do everything we can to be as forward thinking and proactive as we can. And so one of the strategies we implement with our clients is we have a open source intelligence or an intelligence team that's constantly monitoring various online platforms, open web, dark web, and put together, it's called open source intelligence, where we have real analysts, humans that have done this at the highest level in other government agencies and are now our employees or our team members. Like they process this information. And if we come across something that is threatening or needs escalation based on our client, we're able to pass that information to our teams that are on the ground, our team members that are on the ground. And we can say, hey, this is some information that we're detecting on either this dark web forum or this open web platform or this fringe social media platform. So be prepared. This is what they're saying, and this is what they're doing. This is what they look like. And if the threat is there, we can also escalate that to local law enforcement or state, federal law enforcement, depending on what the jurisdictions are. And so with that proactive approach, that threat doesn't then just descend upon you and you never knew about it. We can actually be preventative by staying tuned into that type of thing. And that's a case study that is pretty regular with us, whether it's a school, a corporation, a high net worth individual. We're monitoring for all of our clients in that sense, and it really gives us additional eyes and ears.
What kind of protection can you have as well? Can you legally carry an arm? Like, how do you neutralize a threat if it approaches?
Well, yeah, state dependent, right? Country dependent. It's very specific where we are. And a majority of our clients are in the continental United States. And still within the continental United States, there are some regulations, but we utilize a lot of retired law enforcement and guys that have good standing. They can carry legally in most states, or actually in almost all states, due to certain with their good standing with their previous entities. But yeah, so in almost all of the executive protection side of the house, we don't do any unarmed protection. I will knock on wood, we really haven't had to intervene, but it's because, a lot of people are like, well, how tell me about some times you've interfaced with your, saved your client's life. Well, we do it by not having to interact with folks. Well, we'll have folks at maybe a large event, and then our intel sources will say, yeah, there's a large gathering forming outside. So we use a different exit, so, we don't have an example of how we've had to intervene with firearms, but yeah, we carry all of our executive protection agents, uniformed agents carry firearms.
There you go. The school shootings problem, is it simple to solve, or is it quite complex in your opinion?
It's complex. And I think there's a few different ways to look at it. But ultimately there's a problem, and there's like the root of the problem and the fruit of the problem, if you will. And unfortunately, the fruit of the problem oftentimes manifests at the school level, where an active shooter picks a school, because typically schools are what we'd call soft targets. They're easy to get into. They're easy victims because it's usually younger people with few adults from a ratio standpoint. So for people that are looking to inflict mass casualty, schools, unfortunately, typically a soft target. The approach we have to solving it we're solving more of like we're not root cause necessarily solving. We're how do we solve at where it's manifesting at a school. We've taken a 3-pronged approach to it, where we say a school should have competent, qualified armed security. The number of personnel are contingent on the campus size and the campus layout. They should have some basic infrastructure in place, some minimum infrastructure, access control, cameras, gates, policies, procedures in place. And then the third thing is training for the staff, for the faculty. It's a bit of a 3-legged stool, where you can have the best armed security team, but if you don't have infrastructure in place, or the staff isn't trained on how to respond, the 3-legged stool kind of falls over. And so if you have competent armed security, minimum infrastructure in place, and a well-trained staff, your ability to deter and to prevent anything from happening goes way up. It goes way up.
Is it easier now than it was before to protect a client, knowing that the threat has more access to data, information, and technology, but you also have access to your own technology to fight them back?
The stakes are higher, and the information is readily available. So it's a bit of a two-edged sword in that sense. As technology advances and becomes more readily available, the barriers to entry to use it for good or to use it for bad continue to get lower, that barrier to entry. And so for us, we just, again, it goes back to that proactive approach. We know that bad actors are out there and can find different methods and techniques and procedures on various methods of attack, whether it's physical or digital. And so for us, we're doing everything we can to stay ahead of that by staying proactive, by monitoring online. We do a lot of personally identifiable information removal as well for our clients, where if you have a public profile or a high net or a net worth of something that people are attracted to. In today's day and age, you can go online and you can find where people live, you can find phone numbers, you can find social security numbers with very little effort. And so if I can find where someone lives by doing a quick search online, then physically I can go show up to their residence or their place of work and inflict harm on them, or I can harass them, or I can do some sort of disruption. So for us, we stay ahead of that by removing as much information on our clients as we can. So we have a whole PII deletion program, or personally identifiable information program, where we're going to strip all that data. We're going to strip addresses, phone numbers, social security numbers, so that bad actor can't find that information on them and can't physically or digitally harass them. And so that's how we're staying ahead of the technology threat as it evolves.
I mean,
is it possible to fully remove everything?
Is it possible to fully remove everything? No, it's not. It's removing low-hanging fruit, and it's a lot of it depends on how it was filed too, how the information was available, right? Like if something's public record, you can't go legally redact public record oftentimes unless there's very special circumstances. And so what we're doing is we're removing the easy options, the easy buttons for the person that is looking for them. But yeah, unfortunately or fortunately, there's just the way that everything works is, once something's online, it's hard for full removal. And so I think it is a good point that you bring up, Charles. Like 100% removal of anything, I don't think is possible today, but you can severely mitigate in the same way that you can't 100% keep someone out of your house. Like if someone wants in bad enough, they can find a way to break in. But if you make it more challenging by putting locks, putting cameras, putting lighting, all that, you put layers around it that give you indications like, hey, someone's coming, or that bad actor says, I'll just go somewhere else. I'll go to a place where I can break in easier. And so it's the same, it's a similar methodology that we take on the digital side.
Can I add something to that? We also
Please.
Often have to educate our clients. These are very, very successful people in their field, but then they
post on Instagram and
exactly. When you take a picture of yourself and you're trying to hide your location and the Statue of Liberty is behind you, well, you know what? You told them where you are. So, I mean, it's not just that simple, but there's so much information that people post out there that we just say, if you are this high net worth individual or you are someone who is has a high threat profile, let's do some stuff aside from putting just locks on your doors, which is so shocking too, how vulnerable most people's homes are. They bought a home that had security system. Well, that doesn't work. You got to check this stuff. But we teach our clients how to, if you're going to buy multiple homes, there's a whole bunch of ways of doing it. So you don't have a breadcrumb trail. You don't want to find a consistent theme, is it under the same LLCs, under the same lawyer. We help them do things so it can't be easy. It's that upstream homework. So we don't ever have to have the guy on the ground that's protecting the family draw their firearm and, God forbid, get in some type of lethal engagement. But it's teaching them how to just, they do so great in their side of the world, in their side of their life, but let us just teach them just fundamental safety stuff. And really the biggest thing is just asking people to actively participate in their life. So many people do not participate anymore. They think on so many levels, aside from just like, let's say like an emergency. Well, everyone thinks, well, just call 911, then disengage. We're just like, oh my gosh. I mean, no, call 911 and actively stay involved. Because imagine it's like you fell and broke your leg and had a small, like an internal femoral bleeder, and you just think 911's coming. Well, we teach them like, you can bleed out in like 3 minutes. So stay engaged, put a tourniquet on her. So something to that effect too. You hear someone in your house. Well, turn your alarm, set your alarm off, call 911, lock your doors, do all the policies and procedures and methodologies that we teach them to do to keep themselves safe. But it's staying engaged in life. And it's not just these extreme scenarios, just going to the grocery store, just stop for a second and look up and just watch. Like you'll see the guy walking out with his headphones on and is down in his phone and he's carrying his baby and he's got 6 a 6-pack, groceries. And it's just like, my gosh, man, aside from like being a victim of a crime, because you're the totally low-hanging fruit, but you're going to be the one that's walking across the street that gets hit by a car. So it's just like, head up, just try to be a little bit more up and out, and you'll actually see, you can be much safer, but you also appreciate the day. You'll actually recognize where you went. So many people just use their GPS to get places and don't even remember driving there. So imagine how responsive and reactive and proactive they're going to be to things if they actually just looked up and out in life a little bit more.
Right. Yeah, there was the doxing story about Elon, like people doxing his jet. There was also like a guy that jumped on the car carrying his child or something like that at some point. How do you actually get rid of someone like that? Is the public system the best way? Like just jail someone like that? Someone like that? If someone enters my house, can't I just damage them so that they don't come back? Like, can I just shoot them?
Well, it depends. It depends on the laws and wherever you are on what kind of action you can take there. We're obviously huge fans of self-defense if you have to. But yeah, I mean, if there's a real threat and you're in fear for your life, you should do everything you can to protect yourself, protect your family. As far as like those isolated incidents, if there's a real threat towards you, your family, your friends, your organization, you should involve law enforcement and have law enforcement get involved so that the proper action can be taken.
Or can't my private security just kick their ass and so that they don't come back? Is that a good deterrent strategy to permanently eliminate the problem, or is just someone that's psychologically damaged would keep on coming back and be obsessed with like tracking me or whatever?
You can't just eliminate people. I'll say that. No. But if you're in the defense of your life, you have inherent right to self-defense, right? And if you want to remove people that are trespassing, you can definitively remove people from trespassing. But in today's day and age, we're always prepared to use lethal force. God forbid if we ever had to. Ideally, we de-escalate. But you have to get the law enforcement involved today. You need to protect yourself legally. You have to have essentially a list that can follow you of complaints regarding folks. There's so much involved in this today. You have to file these police reports so you can take legal action against individuals. But you have the right to self-defense.
Right. Talking about mental health and that being the root cause of a lot of ills in our society, school shootings, or just someone stalking me for whatever reason. You both have been through pretty traumatic events in your career as Navy SEALs. How did you psychologically dealt with that to not let it hamper your life like a bunch of veterans did?
Well, I'll start with this one, Jake, I guess. I mean, one, the system that we go through in all the special operations communities and all the military, you're inoculated to stress. So you don't, if you're trained right, and if you have those, the Malcolm Gladwell 10,000 hours making you a professional, and that's really what our intent was as SEALs, is to train constantly. So you're always relying, your bandwidth is used to making a good decision, not to doing some process or procedure like drawing a firearm. But we're inoculated to stress. Oftentimes, I've dealt with PTS or PTSD. It's way after the fact. I didn't have a problem on that exact moment, but maybe just as I've retired, things creep into your mind. But there's a lot of stuff out there to help us today. Just acknowledging the fact that this stuff can creep up on you and come back to you. It's real, and there's a ton of nonprofits out there that are willing to help veterans today. There's so much help that our forefathers, like the Vietnam era guys and the World War II guys and the Korean War, they just didn't have anything, so they just went to the bottle. And we know now today there's just so much out there. And historically, if you admitted that you had a problem, you were weak, or you were a weak man, and it's just like that's not the case. There's a ton of people that want to help today. So there's just so many opportunities. You just got to want to get help.
Jake, what do you think about that one?
Yeah, I agree with him. The intent of the training is that inoculation, so that when you find yourself in those high stress environments, you're able to perform and make decisions that are effective. So, and really what it is, it's the repetition through training, creating that neural pathway so that regardless of the chaos that's happening around you, you've repped out these various tactics, techniques, procedures so many times that, like, if Robin goes right, I know I'm going to go left. Or if a certain thing, comes in this way, I know we're going to go that way. And we've repped it out so many times that it allows our minds to perform. Not it. There's no, there was this. There's not necessarily a secret to it. And I remember there was this big rock at Buds. It's been there for a little bit. It's like the secret to Buds, that's SEAL training, is under this rock. And really it was just that we had the fortunate opportunity to train a lot and to do some really high quality training, so that when it happens real world, you're not as surprised by anything. And if anything, there's a level of expectation management that says, your mind says, I've done this before, I know what to do now.
There you go. Well, thanks to you both for coming on the podcast. Where can people find out more about you and the company?
FortifiedRisk.com is our website. That's FortifiedRisk.com. We have some resources on the page there. And then our contact info is there as well if you wanted to learn more.
Fantastic. So that was Jake, Robin, and